All set, Sharon? Okay. All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's meeting. We'll call the meeting to order at 4:33. And the first item on our agenda, I will look to Sharon to call the roll.
Councillor McDonald.
Present.
Councillor Steve Gillespie.
Here.
Citizen Louise Gillespie.
Present.
Citizen Sarah McPherson.
Present.
Citizen Veronica Merrifield. Citizen Dr. Linda Murray.
Present.
Citizen Marcy Shrewy Stanley. And Citizen Elaine Schwartz.
Thank you, Sharon. And we did receive regrets from Marcy. She's a little under the weather today, and also from Elaine. Elaine is doing her good deed and administering vaccinations. So both are definitely excused from today's meeting, and we'll get them caught up at a later date. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from our October 19th meeting. We do have an amendment put forward by Doug Foster. And I believe Doug was just looking for some wording changing in the Rick Hansen standards, not the Rick Hansen program, as I believe it was stated in the minutes. So I think that's the only error or omission or a correction that we identified, but if anybody else has any. And if there are none, I'll look for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
Thanks.
Chairman.
Moved by Councillor Gillespie. I have a seconder.
Louise Gillespie.
Thanks, Louise. Seconded by Louise. All those in favor of the motion, or sorry, I guess I'm looking for the question.
Question, please.
Okay. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 Contrary? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone. So the next item on our agenda, I'm flipping back and forth to my screens here. So I'll look to item 3.1, and I'll call on Kirk Durning for an update on the RFP and the awarding of the contract. I'll turn it over to Kirk.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon to the committee. I'll be brief on this. We had 4 submissions in our RFP for the development of our accessibility plan. They were reviewed and scored by myself, our chair, and Paul Burt, who obviously joins the committee for our meetings each time. We had anticipated having the vice chair score, but he was unable to do so. So the 3 of us scored and unanimously awarded the project to the Reachability Association, who are here joining us tonight.
Thanks, Kirk. We had some great submissions, and certainly not an easy choice, but Reachability came out on top, and based on the preliminary conversations that we've had, I think we're in good hands. If there's no questions or comments on the update from Kirk, we'll move along to the fine folks at Reachability. Did we get a motion for the approval of the agenda? We did not, Madam Clerk. My apologies. If we can, Deborah, you're always one step ahead of me. If we can just back up, we'll look for a motion to approve our agenda unless there's anything to add or omit.
I'll approve the agenda.
Thanks, Dr. Murray. Do I have a seconder?
Seconded.
Thanks, Councillor Gillespie. Looking for the question.
Question.
Okay, question's been called. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Contrary? Motion carried. All right, we can now carry on with our agenda now that it's been properly approved. Thank you, Madam Clerk. So the item number 4 on our agenda is the presentation by Reachability Municipal on the Municipal Accessibility Plan. And I am going to turn the microphone over to Jessica Ward, who is the Project and Program Manager.
Good evening. It's nice to meet you all. Thanks for having us. We're excited to get things rolling and present the plan for the CBRM Municipal Accessibility Plan. We have presented or provided our presentation for the members here to review. And I appreciate whoever's got the power on the slides for getting me set up and rolling. Perfect. Thank you. So I will again just mention my name is Jessica Ward, and I am the project lead on this project and the project and program manager at Reachability. My other colleague, Krista O'Connor, is joining me tonight, and the two of us will be leading this project on behalf of Reachability with the CBRM. So tonight we're going to take a look through our presentation that goes over our work plan. We're going to first start by introducing Reachability and explaining a little bit about who we are and why we are the experts that we hope, the reasons why we were chosen for this RFP. So Reachability, I think there was supposed to be a picture there. It could just be my internet that's a little slow.
It seems to be glitching. Sorry, Jess.
Okay. That's okay.
Also, I just wanted to note that our ASL interpreter at the moment is not pinned. So if you are in need of an ASL interpreter, if you could just look for them in the, or somehow if we could find the host and they could just hit the little ... in the top right corner of the ASL interpreter's screen and just pin that person so that everyone is able to see them. And that when you're recording, that person will show up for anybody who might need that. Sorry, Jess, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, please interrupt away. I'd rather have that taken care of. We want to make sure that everybody watching who may need the ASL interpreter is able to access that. So Reachability is an agency that is based out of the Halifax area. We have been around for just over 21 years. We're going into our 22nd year. And Reachability itself was very involved in consultation around Bill 59 or the Nova Scotia accessibility legislation. And that is the legislation, for those of you who aren't quite familiar, that was released in 2017. And from that, the municipalities and other public sector bodies are being requested to complete accessibility action plans in order to achieve Nova Scotia's goal of being fully accessible by 2030. So our agency was involved in the consultation on that, and we've been working very closely with the government and with municipal bodies and other public sector bodies to help them with their plans. So we've just listed some of the previous projects that we've been working on. So we worked with the town of Kentville on their accessibility plan. We're currently working with the Truro-Colchester area. We helped NASCAD, the Nova Scotia College of Art and Design, complete their accessibility action plan. We have worked on accommodation policies and accessibility processes with Skills Canada. We are helping the Public Service Procurement Canada review their hiring processes. And we did an in-depth accessibility plan for Zatzman Sportsplex, formerly known as Dartmouth Sportsplex, before they rebranded and renovated. So those are just a few of the things that we have experience in doing. So a quick introduction to our team. Our team is first person, experienced, educated, and passionate advocates. And we're here to make this process as easy as possible. Jessica Ward, myself, is the project manager, and I will be the primary contact for this project. You will probably get to see Krista and I. So Krista's in the bottom right-hand corner, and I'm in the top left, out probably wearing toques and scarves, just like Krista is in that photo, as we come visit your region in February to take a look at everything and meet some folks. So we wanted to talk a little bit about the lens that we use when creating accessibility action plans. The legislation is very clear that the most important lens to use is the first person voice. And we use that along with the guidance from the Provincial Accessibility Act, also known as Bill 59, and the federal legislation, which is called the Accessible Canada Act. And we also refer to the Rick Hansen accessibility standards and the universal design lens as a way to help evaluate accessibility and inclusion and to help inform the recommendations we're going to give to the CBRM on improvements that need to be made. So it just shows here that the, sorry, Krista, the Accessible Canada Act is the federal act that pertains specifically to federal organizations. And there is a goal of having a barrier-free Canada by 2040. And the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act applies to all things under the provincial umbrella, first and foremost to the provincial government, and then to municipal and public sector bodies, which is why we're here tonight. And then later, before 2030 gets here, it will relate to private business. So the government is really trying to lead by example to get started and get those action plans and get things moving so that our communities can also pick up on our leadership and move forward with their plans as well. So the Nova Scotia accessibility, Nova Scotia accessibility legislation is broken down into standards. And so the province has identified by speaking with people with disabilities, organizations that support people with disabilities, and other experts in the province and beyond, and have identified 6 standards that they're focusing the legislation on, and one additional priority that they have added to the list because they've realized as they're going through and developing these standards, which not all of them have been developed, they've just identified their commitments in each area, but they realized throughout all of them, the biggest theme that came from it was awareness. And they said that if people aren't aware of the services and aware of accessibility and aware of inclusion and what that actually means, then all of these other standards are moot. So they've added awareness to the list. So we're going to be using these standards and benchmarks to assess all aspects of accessibility in the CBRM, not just the physical accessibility, but accessibility of their information, of the goods and services, of their environments, whether they're welcoming, whether people feel that there's representation there. We're going to be looking at the whole thing, much beyond the wheelchair buttons and the ramps, and really trying to get a good sense of what needs to happen in the area. So we, the project, the Municipal Accessibility Plan project for our social media campaign and for the project name, we're calling it Cape Breton Regional Municipality Moving Accessibility Forward. So you're going to probably hear that tagline, you know, and anytime you see the project come up, just implies that our goal is to not just address accessibility issues, but to get everything moving, to get the plans in motion. And what we're going to be doing, a part of that is environment scans. So I mentioned that Krista and I are going to be joining with some other of our members of our team. We're going to be coming to the Cape Breton Regional Municipality in February, and we're going to be doing environment scans. And what that covers are the capital assets of buildings, and we'll be looking at wayfinding, entrances, bathrooms, workspaces, stairs, ramps, and elevators, and the overall welcoming feel of the space. So we'll be kind of identifying all of the different pieces of a built environment in all the different spaces that we travel to. So we'll also be looking through around the parks and playgrounds and trails. Now, it's a large geographic region. We will not be able to visit all of them, but we will be making sure to get to as many as we can. And we'll be providing recommendations based on the ones that we see on where that standard needs to be held. And again, when we're outside, we're thinking and looking at wayfinding. Can people make informed decisions about where they're going? Are they going to know if there's rest areas, if there's access to water, what the maintenance of the trails and walkways are like, what the accessibility of the structures that are there? You know, maybe there's great trails, but maybe they're good for biking, but not for walking, or maybe vice versa. So we need to make sure that the wayfinding and the information that's available allows us to make informed decisions. We'll be taking a look at the built infrastructure that's around CBRM, including the sidewalks and other public spaces. We'll also be looking into community spaces like libraries, fire halls, different things like that, and checking out and making sure that all points of the community are accessible by everybody. And so we always address all these essential things like wayfinding and rest areas, entrances, exits. And we review them all for their accessibility barriers, but also to point out the successes and the amazing things that we know that are already happening in CBRM. And we're going to celebrate those and say, okay, look, this worked really great here. You could do that also here and be able to really build off those opportunities. Another thing that we're going to be doing through, which is going to be a huge piece of the project, is as much community engagement as we can. So we've put together a community engagement strategy that's going to involve different types of community consultation. So depending on COVID-19 and how the regulations are in February, we're hoping to actually be able to meet some of you and members of the community in person and talk about what needs to be done in your community, what's working, what's not, what's missing. If not, we have done a number of the community consultations in the past virtually, and we are able to do those. We're open to having phone conversations. We're also going to be doing some adding some pieces around photography and getting the community involved by providing some pictures and many other things through our social media campaigns. We are also going to be doing surveying. We have built a survey, which we will fine tune to the CBRM, that we will be asking folks to fill out, and we'll be talking to anybody who lives, works, goes to school, or visits the area. So we know that the CBRM wants to be accessible for all of its community members, and that encompasses a large group of stakeholders, not just those who only live there. Lots of people travel in and out, are there for a short time, maybe to go to school at the, the NSCC campus. So everyone's perspectives and experiences are really important. So we're going to try to gather as much as we can through the surveys. And also we're going to be doing some mapping activities. So we'll be using a mapping tool for online, but we'll also be, if possible in person, setting up activities where folks can identify on various maps where there are successes and possibly issues and areas for opportunity. So the plan, we're going to be as thorough and expeditious as we can. The CBRM is committed to having their plan ready by the end of March. So we're in January now. And the first thing we can check right off the list, we're presenting our plan to the Accessibility Advisory Committee. So that's what we're doing tonight. We're then going to be reviewing the plans, policies, programs, and services that are offered by the CBRM. That's a big part of the research that we have to do to find out what strategies are already in place, what plans do they already have in place, so that we can make sure that our strategies align or intersect with what's already happening. And so we can find out all the amazing programs and services that are available and make appropriate recommendations for new ones, for adapting them, or celebrating the successes that are already there. We're also in the process of compiling a list of capital assets. Thank you to everyone that's helping with that. And we're going to fine tune our engagement strategy that I just mentioned. By early February, we will have an online presence created. So there'll be a website that folks will be able to visit to gather all the information they need about what we're doing, when we're doing it, and how they can get involved. We'll also be creating social media campaigns and posters that people can share around, either online or printed. As I mentioned, we'll be deploying that survey. We'll be really fine-tuning it to fit the CBRM, and we'll be building a plan on how to get that out to your communities. So this is a big piece that's going to take a lot of involvement from the members and from other folks and stakeholder groups, because you know your communities best and you know how to access them and what has worked and what hasn't. So we really look to your expertise in knowing how to get that survey circulated. And we're going to be hosting, starting in February, some virtual community engagement sessions so that we can get some engagement running before we head into the CBRM for our in-person sessions later in February. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to be heading to Cape Breton. We plan to be there from February 22nd to the 25th. And we're going to be doing our environment scans, hosting a few engagement sessions and mapping sessions if we can in person, and also looking to reach out to individual stakeholders and organizations that are support organizations, community organizations, and meeting them in person or on the phone while we're there, but trying to make some good contacts there with the folks that are on the ground floor doing the work and supporting the community so that we can really hear from them what they've learned and their perspectives and what's needed, because that's really important. So in early March, we're going to compile all the feedback that we've gotten from the different community engagement activities and the mapping exercises. We're going to get that ready as we're going to be presenting it a draft accessibility plan. And additionally, we'll be prioritizing all of the built spaces and capital assets that we have visited, getting together our initial recommendations, and also starting to prioritize which spaces need renovation or replacement. And we'll be creating our draft accessibility plan. Then we'll be moving right into hosting some community engagements to review the draft plan. So we're not just going to get all of the community engagement, compile it, and just assume that we've understood what everybody said and make our plan. A big piece is to present it back to the AAC and to the municipality, make it available to the community in person if we can, if not online, and allow everyone to provide some feedback and say, listen, Jessica and Krista, you guys really hit this one on the nail on the head, but you're completely left field on this other thing. Or maybe we'll find out that we made a recommendation that has already been implemented or has already started somewhere else. So it's really important to review that plan with the community. So we'll be doing that in March and getting that feedback so that we can amend the plan and submit it for its final draft. And as I mentioned, our goal is to have that done by the end of March, first week of April. So one of the first pieces of this process is really important with the Accessibility Advisory Committee that's here tonight, is to discuss a statement of intent. So the province of Nova Scotia created a little toolkit, I think they call it, kind of a how-to manual on how to get an accessibility committee rolling and how to get them engaged and really focused on what their goals and their commitments are. And so one of the biggest pieces is that they want the AAC to develop a statement of intent. So we're going to talk a little bit about the statement of intent, statement of commitment. But some things we want to consider are in making that, the goals of the AAC need to be around ensuring equal access and participation for all people, regardless of their abilities, treating all people in a way that allows them to maintain their dignity and independence, meeting the needs of people who face accessibility barriers, and identifying, removing, and preventing barriers by meeting the requirements of the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act. So, and that's a big piece. We don't want to just point out, oh, look, yeah, the sidewalks here are horrible. And we don't want to just say, fix the sidewalks, because that's just like putting a Band-Aid on it. What we want to do is put something in place, a policy, a standard in place so that all sidewalks will now be built to this new standard so that we'll be preventing those barriers from happening again. So when we look at creating our statement of commitment, we just wanted to review some definitions so that everyone is on the same page of the goals we're trying to achieve. So we want to achieve inclusion of all people. So inclusion is the process of improving the terms of participation in society, particularly for individuals or groups of individuals who are disadvantaged or underrepresented, through enhancing opportunities, access to resources, voice, and respect for their rights. This creates a sense of belonging, promotes trust, fights exclusion and marginalization, and offers the opportunity of upward mobility and results in increased social cohesion. So inclusion isn't just by saying, okay, we put a ramp in, people in wheelchairs can get in now. Inclusion is creating a space where people that are in wheelchairs or use mobility devices feel like they can move freely, just like everyone who doesn't have mobility barriers can. So it's making them feel like they're included in the space, not just welcome in the front door. So it's an overall welcoming thing. We talk a lot about that when it comes to like inclusion, including people of different backgrounds as well. We want to make sure that the spaces are welcoming. And so it's one thing to say that they can get in, but it's another thing to mean it and to create a space that includes them. Accessibility means the prevention and removal of barriers, physical, attitudinal, technological, or system, to allow equitable participation for persons with disabilities or others who experience barriers to accessibility. So a good example of accessibility right now is that we have an ASL interpreter with us. We have two, thank you, Monica and Sydney, and I hope that, that they are visible to those who need them. And that's a form of providing accessibility, because we have prevented or removed a barrier where you can't see me. It's hard to have captioning on the screen with the presentation. And some folks who have hearing impairment or are deaf, their language is only through ASL. So we've prevented and removed that barrier by making sure that the ASL interpreter is here and is visible. And I hope that that's happening for those in need of it. Barrier free. So I mentioned that Nova Scotia has a goal of being barrier free by 2030, and Canada has a goal of being barrier free by 2040. A barrier-free environment is one which enables people with disabilities to move about safely and freely and use all facilities within the built environment, roads, parks, gardens, and other places. So barrier-free means that you should be able to access anything in your community. There shouldn't be anything that's stopping you. So something could be, like maybe there's a recreation program and it costs $20 per child. Some recreation departments are making it that if that $20 is a barrier, that there is room for children to be able to access that program for free. So it doesn't mean that everything has to be free, but it has to mean that there is a way to remove the barrier. And so that's what we're aiming for, is to help CBRM become barrier free. So we provided a few examples of statements of commitment. So here's an example from the Town of Kentville's Accessibility Advisory Committee. And so I'll just read that out. Our vision is for Kentville to be a healthy, vibrant, integrated, and welcoming community where all citizens and visitors can live, work, and play in an environment that promotes a fulfilling quality of life. We acknowledge that currently the barriers to achieve this, there are barriers to achieving this vision. Through respectful engagement that honors the journeys of people with differing abilities and experiences, and through measurable outcomes that focus on equity, we will hold ourselves accountable to the Nova Scotia Accessibility Act. Kentville's accessibility plan will guide the town in meeting the needs of all people who face barriers when accessing all that Kentville has to offer. Kentville is a town committed to fairness, kindness, dignity, and independence. So that's one example of a statement of commitment. And here's one from Lunenburg. We commit to fostering a culture of accessibility, encouraging the prevention and removal of barriers to participation, and building capacity in these areas amongst municipal staff, council members, and the public. Several principles have guided this process and should remain as priorities as we move forward to implement this plan. Working towards equitable access for all members of our community means that every individual has an equal opportunity and everyone is treated fairly. Equitable access acknowledges individual circumstances to remove barriers. It is essential to include first voice perspectives or lived experiences of people with disabilities in the creation of this plan, actions, and decision-making process. As new standards are introduced and new technologies become available, we will review and update this plan to ensure its relevance. As such, this plan should be interpreted as a living document. It is essential to continue to collaborate with other municipal units, the Accessibility Advisory Committee, the Nova Scotia Accessibility Directorate, and the community partners to advance this plan and work towards improved accessibility in our communities. So we would like to open the floor. First, I think we should probably open it for questions. And then we would like to have like an open discussion around what people think is important to be a part of the CBRM statement of commitment.
Thanks, Jessica. That was great. Lots of good information in there. Some when I skimmed through your presentation yesterday, I was any questions or concerns that I thought I might have, you addressed them all. So great presentation. So our typical rules for conversation would be each member would have an opportunity to speak for 5 minutes and could come back for a subsequent 2 minutes. But given the nature of the conversation, I think if it's agreed upon by the committee, we can relax those rules today, and perhaps we can do 2-minute speaking points. So you'll have 2 minutes to speak. Once you have completed your 2 minutes, we'll move on to somebody else, and you can have unlimited speaking access just in 2-minute intervals if that's agreed upon by the committee.
That's agreeable.
Yes.
Okay.
Agreeable.
Agreed.
Great.
Okay, so we will we'll open the floor then to questions. So you can use the chat function if you'd like to speak to anything Jessica just mentioned, or if you want to use the raise hand function in the reactions. Either is fine, and I will keep a running list of the speakers. So does anybody have any questions, comments, concerns from what we just saw? All right, Louise.
Yes.
All right, we'll start with Louise, and then we'll move on to Councillor Gillespie. Go ahead, Louise.
Thank you for the great presentation. I did notice when you were talking about the inclusion part, you mentioned about wheelchairs and mobility devices being able to move into an area and get around and feel comfortable in there. My question regarding that, or comment regarding that, is it has to be color coordinated and all that, so that somebody with sight loss, such as myself, would be able to move freely as well. And that is one of the biggest and major barriers that I can see in much of the municipality at this point right now, like even for getting onto a street or upstairs in a building, there's no indication on that. And with that in mind, that's second part of it would be, will you be involving people such as members of this committee and others to attend your walkthroughs when you're doing some of this, to basically point it out? I know you have other people with you, but as the Rick Hansen plan is the golden standard, it lacks a lot on the division part in many ways. So that's my point for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Louise. Great point. I don't know, Sarah, if you want to comment on that, sure.
Okay, I was going to say, am I allowed to answer? I'm not used to very official meetings. Louise, I love that. I will say I have a lot of respect for the Rick Hansen standards, and I appreciate that so much effort has been put into a standard to really be a leader, like to allow for people to grab something, because right now we need them to have something, right? And so I'm really grateful that it's there. I will tell you, you are not preaching to the choir, for lack of a better way of saying it. We will definitely be looking beyond just the physical. The reason why I usually revert to a physical reference is because it's something that most people align with accessibility. So it's the quickest and easiest thing. We would love if there was a few places that you would like to show us around that cause a lot of barriers for you. We would welcome that, or any other committee members. We're also going to be doing a project that we can talk about at a later time, where it really allows for citizens to point out those really key issues that interfere with their daily routines, because that's what we want to do, is make it so that people can move freely all the time. But we're definitely looking at color. We're looking at transitions inside buildings, outside buildings, like textile indicators. Like we're there, and definitely keen on taking all that in.
Great, thank you.
Great. Thanks, Jessica, and thanks, Louise. So next on the speakers list, we have Councillor Steve Gillespie, and then Sarah's next.
Thank you, Chairman McDonald, and Jessica, thank you very much for the presentation. It's fantastic to see, and as Councillor McDonald indicated, I went through it as well, and you know, I really can't find a whole lot to be able to question you on. I think that the individual, you know, the points that you made with regards to where we have to go as a CBRM are very clear. I like your timeline when it comes to, you know, what we're doing this month, next month, and then into the spring. I would ask if you would have any idea of what you would see as a CBRM timeline for the beginning of what we have to do here. And, you know, obviously there will be no end. This will be an ongoing adventure for CBRM, because when we're looking at capital projects, we're also looking at libraries, parks, you know, our own buildings as well. Knowing what you know right now about CBRM, could you give us an idea of a you know, of a ballpark type of timeline, or a timeline for what you would like to see?
In the nutshell, no, I cannot. I wish I could, but I can tell you that you can always start now. You could start now before we even give you a plan.
Yes.
Like for example, and I go back to lovely Monica that's doing interpretation on the screen right now, and I just got to get her to sign lovely Monica. But it's no, you know, it's very important to lead by example and to ensure that somebody doesn't have to ask for access to something. So even something as simple as having an ASL interpreter on these public things, that we didn't know, you know, in all fairness, that this was going to be live on YouTube, although, you know, hey, YouTube. But it is, and anything that you're doing that you're not able to ask every single person if they need a service, you should just be providing it so that everyone can have equal access. So that's something that you can start now. Have your AAC, if it's going to be live on YouTube, always have an interpreter. You know, there are always things you can always start. You don't have to wait for us to tell you. I know that we will be prioritizing things, and we'll be giving you recommendations. We'll be saying, like, look, we know building a library is probably going to be within the next 5 years. However, here are some things that could be done within the next 12 months that are going to ease your community members and make things much easier for them than a new library at the moment. Like the things that are going to be able to be changed once you see the plan. It's not the big capital projects that are affecting your community. And I can tell you that without visiting the community as much, because we've visited communities, and it's more, I go back to my very first statement when I was reviewing this, going through the standards, it's more about the attitude of inclusivity and the wanting people to be aware of what you can do for them, and allowing them to know what it is that isn't there, so that they're not having to have those indignified situations come where, like, they try to go into a building and, you know, and like Louise says, she can't even, she's not able to read the signs to be able to get to where she needs to go, right? Like that shouldn't happen. Those things aren't going to take 5 years for anybody to do. Those are things that can be started very soon. But no, I wish I could tell you, I haven't been Cape Breton since I was, you know, a wee child. But I'm learning a lot in our research, and I can tell you that from the team that we've spoken to already, you know, you've already got some things in place, and you already have the knowledge and the awareness that it needs to change. So you've already gotten through one really big hurdle.
Okay. Mr. Chair, if I'll come back.
Sure, yeah. We'll jump to Sarah, and then we'll let you back in, Councillor Gillespie. And Jessica, I like the comment. I think you said equal access for all, and it's, you know, that's one that resonates with me. I think I mentioned the other day my background is working with people with disabilities, and when you talk about your dignity and, uh, going somewhere and the washroom isn't accessible, or you're in a wheelchair and the doors aren't accessible, or the doors aren't wide enough. I could go on and on and on, but equal access for all, I like that. And I know I've heard it before, but it certainly resonates with me. So we'll pass the baton over to Sarah next.
Thank you. I have a couple of thoughts. One is just to second some of the things that have already been discussed. Louise's comment in terms of the needs of folks with vision barriers. I relate really distinctly to that. And there's a lot of really small things that are really pervasive in a lot of social spaces that come down to the individual has to adapt and has to become comfortable with a certain level of discomfort, or comfortable with a certain level of question in that dignity, a certain level of lack of independence in some spaces where you're reliant on other folks to provide assistance or provide information that for most people is readily available. So it's really good to hear that that's something that's going to be included in these processes, and that we've kind of already started discussing. The second thing is a suggestion in terms of the media material that will be going out, especially, I guess, the physical material or some of the online material. There may be formats wherein it's not as simple to do, but I feel it would be really valuable to include some of those definitions of terms that are included in your presentation in some of that material, so that those understandings are given some space in the broader conversation in the community. Just as a thought.
Before you carry on, Sarah, that's your 2 minutes. But if Councillor Gillespie would like, we can allow you to carry on, and then we can move back to Councillor Gillespie.
Oh, so I have to be a good person here, do I? I don't know if that's I don't know if that's in my DNA. Yes, no problem.
Yeah, okay. All right. Sorry.
No problem. Thank you, Chair.
Sorry, Sarah. Carry on.
No, that's okay. The final thought was fairly short and fairly sweet, actually. In the examples that we were provided of statements of commitment, personally, I feel some of the really valuable points include the aspect of an understanding of a lived document, as well as the concepts around equity in access. So I think we should include those. And that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Yeah, did you want to respond to any of that, Jessica, before I?
No, I definitely agree and that's why we included those definitions in this process, because even though we're all here for the same reason, I think you can't kind of review those definitions or take a moment to give them a little bit of space enough. Again, I revert back to like my wheelchair. The reason of me referencing the wheelchair is because the majority of people think when you say accessibility, they think it's someone in a wheelchair or a physical disability. And physical disabilities is actually one of the smallest groups of disability in the world. Invisible disabilities are the largest group, with visual impairment and blindness and the deaf community and cognitive disabilities. I mean, that encompasses all things from ADHD to Alzheimer's and everything in between. So I dislike that I have to bring up the wheelchair in order for people to understand, but it's something that they can relate to, whereas they may not if I'm trying to be like, well, you have to the colors, right? I mean, we understand that because it's the language that we speak, that contrast is really important. But it's not something that we can get everyone to relate to. So I definitely agree. And I'm thinking in my head, as you mentioned, the definitions, that maybe we'll just do a few posts that are literally a definition. Krista was thinking the same thing. Like we can really, so I really appreciate you saying that. And I agree. I loved that the town or the municipality of Lunenburg said that this is going to be a lived document. It has to be anyway. I'll just say that for those who aren't really aware, but it is a document that has to be reassessed, I believe, every 2 to 3 years in order to see what you've accomplished and build on to the other end of it. So like, geez, we've gotten this far, but we're going to keep going so that it is constantly living and moving. And so, but I like that they put it at the forefront. They didn't have to, because they know that that's a rule anyway, but I like that they're telling people, because then it takes that question out of their mind already. So I appreciate your comments.
Yeah, and I think to that, Jessica, some of this work will take years probably to really implement. There's some things that we'll be able to do very quickly, but some of it we'll have to go back in a few years and say, how did we even make a dent in that, or is that something that's still on the docket? So I should, before we go to Councillor Gillespie, Krista, if any time you want to jump in as well, feel free. Jessica's unmuted, so I've just been reverting to her. But anytime you want to jump in, so we'll pass now the mic over to Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald, and I like this. This is very interesting how we're learning what we need to do, but just a suggestion that came up, and now Krista and Jessica are nodding their heads going, oh yeah, that's a great idea. We should be looking at that. And that's the way I see this as well as a constant opportunity for us as a committee, but not only us as a committee, but Searle and I and the rest of our council as a group of people who will continuously learn on how to make our municipality more accessible and more friendly to people with all different types of disabilities. And I'm glad you brought up the difference between individuals with physical disabilities versus individuals with cognitive, as well as sight and hearing. And I say that because the brand of physical disabilities with the wheelchair and the white and blue coloring is just automatic now. People see that color scheme, they recognize it, and it's something that's been ingrained into people's minds, saying, yes, that is persons with disabilities, and that's what I have to strive for. But the reality is there is so many more people out there that either maybe fall by the wayside or we forget to bring into the conversation. So I'm really glad that came up. Part of this for me as well is when we talk to individuals, we talk about a needs, a wants, and a wish list. So I like that this is a living document. What we need to do, we can do right away. What we want to do, we can plan for. And what we wish we can do, we can put in a long-term solutions for. I'm really, really glad.
And on that note, that's your 2 minutes, Councillor.
I have something to say. I can't get the hand to come up.
Sure, yeah. Jessica, did you have anything to add to what Councillor Gillespie said before we jump over?
No, I do like the needs, wants, and wish list thing, because Krista and I are really the same brain. Because when we present things, we present like barriers, benchmarks, and opportunities. So the barriers are the things.
Yeah.
The benchmarks are things that you should strive for, and the opportunities are things that like you could do this and it's going to be like icing on the cake. And it's going to guide all the other things and help all the other things. So I love that. And Dr. Murray, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I like the livingness component. It's basically something statistical. It's called iterations. So you find something, you change it. You find something, you keep modifying as you go. Now a little more difficult issue. I'm not from Cape Breton originally. I'm from Manitoba. And some of you know that I use service animals. I have 2 small birds. The only place I've had a problem with them, all the stores, restaurants, everybody's great as soon as you say service animal documentation. Until you go to non-sterile environments in the hospital or at the doctor's office. I got kicked out of a doctor's office for bringing them. So that you're going to have to put in your, how are we going to fix this? Because Nova Scotia only considers dogs as service animals. I can't control a dog with my hands, but my little guys, they sit right on me and they don't fly. And they cuddle. And they make going out easier. So that's a tough one. I'm looking into ways to change it, but it's funny that it's a government issue, a healthcare issue, not a community issue. The community gets it immediately. As soon as you say service animals, they've got it. So there's a tough one for you to think about. And on my final word is I'm a research specialist. If I wasn't disabled, I would be someone who would be competing for these contracts. So if you've got any need of survey work or anything like that, I'd be interested. That's all I have to say.
That's great. I wish that I had some little birds to snuggle me.
No, you don't. They're like having 2-year-old twins for 25 years.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great. To be honest, Reachability has had a number of service animals. We have had a bunny, we've had a bearded dragon, we had a goldfish, and we had 2 dogs. And
Tell
so
that to human rights.
yeah, so we are very familiar with support animals. There are a lot of things, unfortunately, around accessibility that are government issues. And so we're making a list. And, on one of our other hats, we're advocates for people with disabilities. I'm a person with a disability. My children are people with disabilities. And so we definitely won't be able to change government right away, but we'll definitely look into it and, and see what's going on. I know that you're not the only one that has that issue. I've never heard of someone having birds as service animals, but we had a goldfish. So it does not shock me one bit that you can't snuggle goldfish. You just watch them.
Yeah.
So I made note of that, and we would love if you had any interest in reviewing the survey before we send it out, we could definitely send it through to the committee for you to review.
That would be great. It would just give me something to use some of the skills.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks for that. As you say, your birds, Dr. Murray, and my dog is here nestled at my feet, waiting for my attention. So he's far from a service animal, but he's good company.
My 2 are in a timeout right now because they wouldn't be quiet if they could hear me.
We'll go back to Councillor Gillespie.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. I guess what I wanted to also ask here to Jessica and to Krista is, the old saying, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. Obviously, your company is focused on this type of projects with municipalities. And I'm wondering if there will be an opportunity for us to work with other municipalities in Nova Scotia through you that are currently in the same role that we are, and basically in the same part of that role. We're just getting out of the gate at this point. And I'm just wondering, is there opportunity there to start sharing information Is there opportunity for you as the individual with this contract with us to reach out and say, look, the town of Lunenburg, the town of Pictou, the town of is also doing this, and we're going to try and work with you along with them at the same time?
Well, there's always opportunity. Where there's a will, there's a way. A lot of municipalities have already completed their accessibility plans. So they're all public. So like the Lunenburg, Bridgewater, I believe Yarmouth, Kentville, currently Kings County is their accessibility plan is in its draft. So it's available online for it to be reviewed and to get community feedback. So everybody's in a different place. So not everyone is necessarily in the same spot as Cape Breton Regional Municipality, but there is a lot of movement. I think there is no better process for the province of Nova Scotia and for all of its citizens than for the municipalities to all partner and organize and share information. And I think that was the purpose or the hope of the provincial government when they assigned all municipalities to do this.
Yeah.
So my head is telling me that I got an email last week asking for municipal conversations to happen. I can't remember. So I will look and find out if it's already existing. If it's not, I will tell you that it's something that I would love to be the conduit to do.
Yeah.
So we would love to be the ones to do that. So if it isn't already in existence, we've already had our pause in a few different plans, and we have some connections. So we would love to be able to make that connection for you. I think if you do a little bit of Googling of your own, you'll find that there are a lot of things that are happening around. Like I know that the town of Kentville, we completed their plan, I think January of 2021. So they've had a year now, and they've already made significant improvements, and they're quite, I don't want to say chatty, but they're quite proud of it. So there's lots that you can find that they've been doing. If you want to see what others are doing, everybody takes their own standpoints on it. Every municipality is different. Cape Breton is a huge urban and rural municipality, like large geographic region. And, so some places are all rural, some places are all urban, like Halifax. So it's hard to say, oh, well, that worked for them, it's going to work for us. But I definitely think that there is strength in numbers, and that it would be great for people to be able to share information. So Krista's taking notes so that I don't have to keep my head down like this taking notes, even though I am a little bit, but she'll remind me and we'll find out for sure. And we have some follow-up things for the AAC, so that will be on our list.
Okay, thank you. My time is definitely up on that question, Councillor. If there is nobody else, I'd like to continue.
Your time is up, and you are more than welcome to go again. I don't have anybody behind you on the list, so you can have another 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. What I was going to say is I appreciate that opportunity, Jessica and Krista, and I would say to you, Mr. Chairman, that there's an opportunity here for us as a committee to reach out to these other municipalities, and I think as a committee we should do that, and do that as quickly as possible. I'm the type of person that likes to see and touch and feel these types of things. Given an opportunity to drive down to Kentville and speak to them and talk to them and see what they're doing would be a great opportunity for me, and I would love to do that. So I would hope that this committee can see the opportunity there to look at what is being done in other areas and stay in touch with other municipalities. So thank you for that.
Yeah, great suggestion, Councillor Gillespie. I agree with you. I don't often say that, but I agree with you.
That's going to be in the minutes.
I know.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's going to be the minutes, and it's also
live on YouTube
as well. So yeah.
I don't have anybody in the list right now, but if there's any more questions, I just have a couple before we take any more, or if there are no more, we can. I know the next item on our agenda is roundtable, and if there's more we want to talk about, perhaps, or if this is our roundtable, I'm not sure. In terms of when you both come here and we're taking a tour of our municipality, will we have a wish list? And there'll be, I mean, I think in my district alone, and I'll be selfish for a minute, I probably have about 25 places I'd like you to see, but recognizing we have 12 districts, and 25 places in 12 districts is probably unrealistic. So I'm just wondering, how do you determine the locations that we should go to, we shouldn't go to? Are they rural, which obviously I have an interest in? Are they urban, which is our downtowns? Or how do we sort of narrow those things down, or how do we determine what's most important and least important?
Well, what we do, we'll be visiting rural and urban. We'll be trying to get to, I'm glad that you said 12 districts, because that will help us divide it up a little bit so that we can make sure that we access at least all of them. And something in all of them. We try to get a good variety. So for instance, I'll just use this as an example. If we go to a fire hall in one district, we're probably not going to go to 4 other fire halls. We have to assess the main municipal buildings, like those are a priority. So whether you have like the municipality building, the library we'll be doing, because it's a huge community space. If there's more than one library, we'll probably visit them all, because libraries tend to be the hub of communities. So we're waiting to get the capital asset list. So I don't know exactly how many buildings you could have, 100 buildings that you need us to go to, which typically what we do, if there's that many, we try to get a good variety of the buildings that we go see. If there are a lot that are really, really old and there are some that are brand new, like we try to make sure that we visit ones that from different generations or different decades that they were built in, because they tend to have the same standard of accessibility. So if you have 4 buildings that were all built in 1970, and they're all office buildings, good chance that they're all going to be kind of built around the same scope. So when we have to go through and prioritize which ones we go to visit, we do that. But we're also able to do things virtually. Like we're going to be there for 4 days. Sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot when we're going to try to get as much done as we can. But as you know, we don't have a lot of time. So we're going to come and spend 4 days. If we don't get to as much as we wanted to during that time, we'll make a time to come back. But we will prioritize like the built spaces first, the indoor built spaces, and then we'll be trying to access like parks and trails that are highly used, or like large parts of the community. And so usually, I don't want to say if you've seen one trail, you've seen them all. But generally, if we go around to a few trails and they all seem relatively, consistent, then we're able to make recommendations on what the trail pathway should be, and wayfinding and rest areas. Like there are standard things that we're going to say you need to do. What we want to do is find places where you've already got them, so that we can be like, look, what you did on XYZ park is exactly what you should have over here in District 11 and 12 at their parks. Like that's going to be the most helpful for you, rather than us saying everything's got to be different. What we're really hoping is to find where you've got it, and then be like, just copy that and maybe tweak a few things. And then you're like, oh, geez, well, we did it here, we can do it there, right? And that will help build a little bit of confidence. But there's not a quick answer to that. I wish I could say we're going to get to every single one. I can't say that, especially since I haven't seen the list of how many there is. But we're going to do our best, and we're bringing a team. So if there are some buildings that we're really, really concerned about, then we will probably split off and we'll send one team there to spend some more time, while another team goes and does some other areas. So it really just depends what the picture looks like.
Okay, much appreciated. If you're looking for perfection, visit District 3.
I'm sure there's an inside joke there somewhere.
Well, I'm the counselor for District 3.
Oh. You're
Yes.
You're putting yourself to quite a standard.
Yeah. No, I won't touch that any further. I see that Sarah has her hand raised. Thanks for that answer. I appreciate that, and I'm sure going through that list is quite the feat. So we'll go to Sarah next.
I actually just had a quick thought and or question around some of the potential spaces. So the question was, do you typically, or are you intending to visit gyms as indoor public spaces? Like fitness,
like
fitness
Good Life
centers?
Fitness? Like,
Yeah, so I don't know, like I've worked at the Y previously, or local YMCA. And I think in terms of the spectrum of the community that is impacted by a gym, they're in a bit of a different position than some of the other gyms that don't provide as many services. But yeah, essentially any of them, is that something that's usually done or that you might do?
so we don't typically, like, say, for instance, if there was like a Good Life or a Fit for Less, we wouldn't typically go in and assess their space because it's private. With the YMCA, where it is a public, the YMCAs are owned by the province, like it's they're funded by. So we would probably try to go in and take a look around if we have time, because it's similar to a library, right? I mean, it's not necessarily run the same way or funded the same way, but in the way that the YMCAs create a hub for the community. So we would definitely try and visit the YMCA.
Fantastic. So I can probably help with some connections there if you like. I still have some contact information when we get to that point. But my other thought, or just something for you guys to look into, is that, and I can't for the life of me remember what the project has been named, or really what the timeline was. It was something that I saw in passing a number of months ago, but in terms of outdoor trails and parks and the like, there is a fairly extensive trail that's in the works, running through Glace Bay and connecting a number of communities along that end of CBRM. So it might be interesting to check on what point in the process that project is, and kind of get in there on something that maybe is still in the process of being built.
Is that Cyril, would you know, is that probably the Trans-Canada Trail? Are they putting a new?
I would assume as much. Yeah, I know I see Kirk just came unmuted. He probably knows the answer.
Yeah, she's talking about the Coal Town Trail there that is that runs from Glace Bay to Dominion, which is municipally owned, but would run through a stewardship agreement with a community group there, who are looking for upgrades in the future, but it would be certainly a space that we'd include. And I've also, I should note too, from a trails and a connection standpoint, we are going through a review, as I mentioned to Jessica and Krista, of the active transportation plan with another consultant who I provided the contact to. And it's good timing because, obviously connecting the accessibility committee and tying it into an active transportation plan is really important.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah, and I was going to say, if it was the Trans-Canada Trail, which we saw all through Colchester County, that's a federal responsibility. So if we found problems with it, we could yap at them. But if it's a municipal one, we look forward to consulting with the active transportation folks.
Thanks, Sarah, for the question, and thanks, Kirk, for jumping in. Does anybody else have any questions, comments, concerns about what we saw in the presentation?
Louise has her hand up, I believe.
Oh, I'm sorry, Louise. I couldn't see your hand blended right in with the picture.
Your picture.
Sorry about that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Louise. Thanks, Krista.
Okay. The presentation was great, and you've covered a lot of territory on it. What I was going to make my comment on was the statement of commitment.
Yes.
for CBRM. I really like what Lunenburg has done. They have included a number of things there that are quite important. So I think that's something that we need to develop into our commitment. And as far as the other part, the trails and whatnot, there are a lot of trails around that we really need a lot of work done on. And just keeping an eye on those things. So anyway, thank you for that. And I appreciate your presentations.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Yeah, Chris and I think it was Councilor Gillespie that said, that you really like that everyone's learning. And I'll just tell you, you can never stop learning. And what Louise just said about the trails, and in knowing that, as she shared that she has a visual impairment, it reminded me that Chris and I have been doing learning. We've recently been trained in assisted guiding. Am I calling it the right thing, Krista? Assisted guiding. So we did a lot of training around that. So, our perspectives are very awoke to that when we were blindfolded and had to move around, and we learned all about the use of canes and those types of things. So it was really great learning experience. So we haven't got to assess a trail since we did that training. So I'm a little excited to get to do that. But yeah, the Lunenburg one, essentially what they did was they took the commitments from the AAC, so the guidelines that the province made for the AAC, and they turned it into like I statements, right? So instead of saying like I will, it's we will, and they've turned them into the kind of ownership statements. So so far, when it comes to the statement of commitment, we've heard that most of the committee agrees that it needs to be a living document and needs to be revisited. So we want to commit to doing that. We want to commit to equity and access for everyone. No limits from abilities. And there was one other, I think that we should also put in it that we're, I'm saying we, like I'm part of the committee now, but I think because there's been a lot of talk about learning and commitments to learning and opportunities, that it would also be great. Lunenburg mentioned that they commit to continuing to build the capacity. And so the legislation talks a lot about awareness and building capacity. At Reachability, we don't speak usually that fancy, and we usually just say you don't know what you don't know. So you have to learn, right? So we all have to start somewhere and continue to gain that knowledge. And we do not expect anybody to know things that they've never learned before. But in order to be more aware, and then therefore to lead and to make positive change, you have to learn. And that is one of the commitments that would have been in your, I believe, in your terms of reference from what I remember, but I know as the AAC, it's a commitment that you've made to continue your own learning, even outside of this plan, to keep learning and about accessibility, because even as I mentioned, I'm a person with a disability, I have children with disabilities, I still have lots to learn about disability and in being inclusive and accessibility. So we constantly have to keep learning. So I think making a statement about continuing to build capacity and keeping learning at the forefront, it is also something that would be great from what I've heard from all of you. So I think the plan with the statement of commitment is we will take kind of review all of the comments that we've heard from everybody, and we can kind of put like a little bit of a suggestion or some bullet points together of what we think might be good commitments. And then when we revisit, we can go back and as a group, and there may be some more folks who weren't able to make it tonight, we can revisit and put that together and agree as a group, what your statement of commitment will be. Does that seem, Cyril? I think that's kind of what we were hoping for, was to take some of so does anybody else have anything else that they think for sure we should consider in adding to the statement of commitment?
I actually have something to say. Something I've noticed about many people with disabilities is that they're on the way right at the bottom of the financial scale. And many people are excluded from doing activities because they're at the bottom of the financial scale. And I think it's time in this country that we change that somehow.
Mhm.
And that, once again, is a long-term thing. But it could be a short-term thing in many small places, like right up front. So there must be some way that we can get fees waived for people who can't pay them instead of leaving them out.
Yeah, I agree. You know, and I mentioned that when I was talking about the definition of barrier free, is that something that we can all relate to is finance as a barrier. And so we know that unfortunately we can't get rid of money altogether and just make everything free, because then we wouldn't have services. And as much as I've tried to convince myself that taxes are the devil, I do understand as I'm adulting that they're a necessary piece of the pie in order for me to be able to have a hospital to go visit and a school for my children to attend. But we do talk and make recommendations around how to eliminate those barriers, because we do understand that people with disabilities are, you know, are a demographic or a group of people that a lot of them are unemployed. Which is one of the reasons why our agency works so hard to support people with disabilities in finding employment, because we believe that everybody is an asset and everyone has value and can achieve something. So we work really hard as an agency to help people find employment. But not everybody can go to work. Not everybody's disabilities will allow them to. So we do look a lot at finances as a barrier and make recommendations, because although people with disabilities are usually also have finances as a barrier, there are a lot of other communities that intersects with, right? Allowing for, as I mentioned, something simple like a parks and recreation fee, because I know most recreation departments have something like that, where it says, you know, if you can't, if this is a barrier to you, please reach out to us and let us know. I don't know if I mean, we could try, but I don't know if we could get that put in place for the water bill. But you know, there are limitations to what municipality can do. But I do think that, again, just with the municipality, they'll be building their capacity. They're going to be doing training that will be recommendations for them to kind of be more aware of things, and they will, where they can, I trust that they will do what they can to help alleviate the strains of that stuff. You know, but they've got a lot to figure out. And a lot of those financial barriers don't come at the municipal level, right? So these, I will say, even though I'm not a counselor, and you can feel free to chime in, Cyril, but I know like financial barriers that affect, you know, most of the community aren't really ones that come from the municipal level. Like there's not a lot the municipality can do on that front.
Yeah, I would agree, Jessica. That's probably an accurate statement. I was going to say, though, I think Councillor Gillespie should be tasked with bringing the water bill issue back to council, and no, you know, great points. And when it's interesting, I always think of the you know, the buildings or the you know, the landlords or whoever that may be, and you know, my building or my service is accessible, but you know, cost is often a barrier. And you know, does that mean that you really are accessible? You know, and then it's all about the definition of what is accessible, and you know, what does that really mean? And you know, how you interpret that, how I interpret it, is different than you, and different than everybody else. So great points, Linda. Yeah, another comment.
Yeah, I'm not looking at big items. I was on a committee once with Mood Disorders Association, and there were people that couldn't get to meetings because they couldn't afford a bus. So I'm talking about,
is something we need to talk about, CBRM. But yeah, that's a big thing. And I mean, and that shows intersectionality, right? Because even though it has to do with finance, it also has to do with transportation. And transportation, yeah, directly relates to access.
Yeah.
So
Access
you can look at that.
Humility.
Mhm. So I'm wondering if we're coming into the end of our round table here that we've jumped right into. So unless there's anything more from our committee members, Jessica, Krista, I'm just wondering if there's more that you think we need or that you need leaving this. We don't want you to walk away and say, darn, I wish I would have asked, or I wish somebody would have talked about. Is there anything that you feel that that is pressing, or that's something we haven't touched on that we should have, or looking for some direction, I guess, before we relieve you of your duties for the night?
I would just like to add, and then I'll let Krista go, is that we are looking for, like, we're reaching out to stakeholder groups. And as I mentioned throughout my presentation, that you folks know your community better than us, right? Like, we're the outsiders coming in to try to help. But that we look to you for your expertise of being in your communities to helping us get in touch with people. And the more you can support by, you know, I forget, I think Sarah said she could connect us to the YMCA. Fantastic. I'm going to hold you to it, Sarah. I even wrote it down.
Sounds good.
And so my email was in the presentation, which everybody received a digital copy of the presentation. But again, I can put it in the chat if it makes it easier, or you can get it from Cyril or Kirk. But I encourage you to contact us, reach out. Oh, Krista just put it in the chat. Thank you, Krista. Reach out to us. You can never reach out too much. We can't have too much information. It will just help guide and inform the plan. So the more folks you can connect us with, the better. We will be leaning to you when we have the survey. Linda will definitely send it out for people to review and get your feedback. And we'll be sending all of the project information through to you. The way we communicate most, it will be through email, because that seems to be the most uniform way, but we are not afraid of picking up the phone and having a conversation. Sharon, I'll be calling you on my personal time. I would love that. I would appreciate that feedback, Sharon. Sorry, I just realized she mentioned me. Sharon's going to call me separately. Didn't see that it wasn't to everybody. Sorry, Sharon. But yeah, please reach out to us and stay in touch. We will be, when is your next meeting? Because we would like to come to the next meeting and book the next step for us with you then. So if you could let us know when that is, so we could put it in our calendar and do our best to work around it, you know?
Kirk, do you have a?
Yeah. So we'll be working on that. We had some changes in
Okay,
the
yes, I
schedule, so
remember.
we'll be working on the meeting schedule going forward. But yeah, I think from here on out, it would be great, Jessica and Krista, have you join and give the folks an update at the rest of our meetings until obviously the plan is developed.
Yeah, we would definitely like to, and as soon as you get that date, Kirk, if you can let us know, because we're trying to, not that we don't want to spend a lot of time with y'all, we're trying to make sure that when we come, we don't waste your time, and that we have like a next step ready for you, so that we can keep the plan moving quickly. And Louise, we will definitely be in touch to schedule and to find out what places that you would really like to take us for a tour on, and to share that your perspective and experience with us. As I mentioned, we will be in Cape Breton in the municipality from February 22nd to the 25th, up into and including the 25th. And so we hope to get to see as many places as possible. And COVID willing, we would like to book a few in-person engagements. We would like to do one like in the downtown area, but also one or two, possibly more in rural areas. So like Cyril, we could come to you in your community if you could help set us up with.
I can fill the fire hall in Boysdale for you.
What's the capacity?
You
say Phil.
Well, 50 is probably our capacity right now. So yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic.
Yeah. I think Councilor Gillespie would agree that the rural, and his district is, I would classify as suburban, but for the most part, but he does have rural as well. And I think that our rural constituents would appreciate for sure a visit. And I say Boysdale because I know they're redeveloping a park, or repurposing a park, I should say. And one of the top of mind priorities for their park is accessibility. So just to, and they have a committee or a working group of about 25 people. So, and they come from various communities in the area and very active and involved. So I say Boysdale, but I'll fill a fire hall in any community you want. So you just let me know.
Okay, well, we will be hitting you up soon, and maybe you and Councillor Gillespie can compete and see who can get the most people out. Sounds like we could have a competition and maybe wrangle up quite a few people to come chat to us. So
I like that. I think I have more people that live on Woodlawn Avenue that live in Boysdale, so I think I'm good.
Okay, so maybe it's a little stacked of a competition, but
no, it's okay. I'll still win. It's okay.
We're always
COVID.
Yeah, well, we're hoping we're gonna plan. We like to always plan to be able to do it in person, and then if not, we'll switch to virtual, but we would like to get the in-person plan in place. We're hoping that we're going to be able to have some engagements, and we are allowed to have small ones as long as we can ensure social distancing, and we always follow COVID protocol, so we are not rule breakers when it comes to that. But okay, so those were my key closing items. I wanted to let everybody know to please reach out to us. The more the merrier, and that we will be coming, and we wanted to set up a few dates. So we will follow up with both the councillors to see about a location and starting to get those organized so that people know we're coming.
Great.
That was it for me. Krista, did you have anything you wanted to mention?
No, all good. Mine was going to be just to let Louise know that we would be in touch, but you already did that part. So
that's it. Okay. Well, thank you very much for having us. We really enjoyed it. And I don't know, do you folks have more to chat about, or?
We do have I think just one more item on the agenda. So you're more than welcome to stay, but you're also more than welcome to go enjoy your evening. So we do appreciate you being here. I think the work to come is going to be a lot of work. But I think we're in good hands, and based on what you presented to us this evening, I think we'll see our plan through, and it will be a good one, and one that the municipality can continue to work with and continue to create a more accessible CBRM, and that's of course the end goal. So thanks so much for being here, and I'm sure we will be in touch.
Yeah, so I think we'll probably stick around, but we'll turn our cameras off so we don't steal the spotlight.
Sure. All right, thanks a lot to you both. So just one more item on our agenda, and I'm going to turn it over to Madam Clerk, Deborah Campbell-Ryan, to address the citizen vacancies and update.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my memo on this matter is on page 31 in the agenda package. And the first part of my report is an update on the vacancy that was as a result of Jenny Rachel Lind when she moved to Newfoundland and she was no longer eligible to serve on our committee. So as noted, the recommendation from the nominating committee, this issue was dealt with by the nominating committee, and they sent a recommendation to council that the vacant seat not be filled. And that was approved by council on December 14th. And that's just for the information of the committee. So since that time, the second part of my report deals with the resignation by Douglas Foster, and that was copied. He did send an email, and it was sent to all committee members. So the nominating committee met again on January 17th, just earlier this week, and with the recommendation, I had sent a recommendation that the vacancy not be filled. And the main reason for that is because the committee as it stands now with the membership we have can certainly operate with the remaining 8 members and still comply with the terms of reference and the Accessibility Act. However, the nominating committee passed a motion that this committee, that the Accessibility Advisory Committee, be asked to provide input on whether this second vacancy should be filled. So this issue is before you for discussion and direction, and I will report the outcome to the nominating committee. Just one other thing I would point out is that Mr. Foster was appointed as the vice chair of the committee. So a new vice chair will have to be selected, and you can certainly do that this evening, or we can list it on the agenda for the next meeting of the committee. So for now, we can deal with Mr. Foster's vacancy and then the vice chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So we'll touch first on the vacancy. I see that Councillor Gillespie has indicated he'd like to chat. So go ahead, Councillor.
Thank you, Councillor McDonald. I was a part of the nominating committee, and it was my recommendation to the nominating committee that we come back to this committee for feedback on whether we should look for a replacement member or allow this committee to make that decision. And I did that because although I don't disagree with the nominating committee and the suggestion from the clerk's office, this is a new committee. We lost a member last year and we're just losing another member. So I wanted this committee to make that decision on whether A, it's a good idea to stay with who we have and let's focus on going forward, or B, let's replace one of the members that we just lost. So I'd like to have the committee's input on it.
Thanks, Councillor Gillespie. Much appreciated. And I think it's important that you made the recommendation, you made the suggestion. We're bringing it back now and some input. I will note, I think that we have a very strong and capable committee in front of us. And although many hands make light work, I think if we carry on as we are now, I see no issue with us getting to the end results in a successful manner. So just my input there. We'll pass the torch now over to Sarah.
Thank you, councillors. Personally, while I agree with the statements in support of our committee as it stands, I think we have a really well-rounded and really engaged group. I also feel that, especially in the comparatively early stages of this committee, that having that space filled and being able to engage with that other voice would probably be a positive as well. So I think I would be in support of that, not for feeling that our committee is lacking, but just feeling that that little bit of expansion couldn't hurt, I guess. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Louise?
Yes, I agree with Sarah on that. The thing is, when people are missing from the committee, like today, we're 2 people unable to attend. Maybe the next meeting, something else will come up and there'll be other people missing. So having a few more, or like at least one more person replacing the most recent one would be a good idea. Yes, we do have a great committee going as it is right now. It seems to be strong and people are speaking up. Sometimes when you have too many people on a committee, then some are kind of left behind and are not able to get a moment to speak. So I'm betwixt and between on that right now. But, you know, I certainly would agree if we go with another person, that it should be somebody representing a group of people that are, you know, not represented by the general population.
Great. Thanks, Louise. Much appreciated.
My turn?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Dr. Murray.
I agree with Louise.
Okay.
Completely.
Great. Thanks. And Councillor Gillespie has another point.
Thank you, Chairman. My question would be to the clerk, and it would be regarding the loss of Doug Foster from the committee as an individual, but specifically, did Mr. Foster fill a a certain role or a specific role, or was he, as I always say, as a member at large?
Thanks, Councillor. When we did the call for citizens to serve, we noted that the committee would be up to 10 members and that 2 councillors, this is in accordance with the terms of reference, that 2 council members would be on the committee, and the remaining, we were asking for people with disabilities or representatives of persons with disabilities. That's a requirement under the Act, and the Act states that it doesn't say what size your committee must be, but it says that half of the committee's membership must be a person with disability or represented and people with disabilities, an organization that represents people with disabilities. So it doesn't specifically state what type of disability. Currently, we have, with the resignation, Mr. Foster, we have 8 members and 2 are council. So 6 citizens of the 6, 5 have indicated they represent, or a person with disability or represent people with disabilities. So we are well within the requirements of the Act, and our terms of reference states up to 10, and we would have 8. So I don't know if we would specifically ask for, if you were going to go out and ask for citizens to put their names forward, I would recommend that we ask for someone with a disability or represent an organization of people with disabilities. So just so that in case we lose another member, that we meet the requirements of the Act.
Okay, thank you. And that was, I guess that was my question. And I also agree with what has been said, that it is always nice to have as many people as possible. But what also happens with as many people as possible also comes the issue with quorum, where how many people we will need. So each individual person we add does increase the amount of people we need for quorum. We're missing 2 people today, and both of those individuals, of course, we always want as many people as possible to participate, especially with the presentation that was done today. But life happens, and we have to be cognizant of the fact that more people sometimes means a less opportunity to get quorum. And as Louise indicated, sometimes you get meetings that go too long because of an issue that comes up and everyone wants to add to it. So I just wanted some clarification on that. And I'm okay either way, folks. For me, if we want to add somebody else to replace the position that Doug Foster had, then that's great. And if we don't, and we want to go with the group we have now, I think the group we have now is more than capable of filling the mandate.
So just on a point to that, I see a few hands raised. So we have 3 missing tonight, and had 1 more person been absent, we would not have had a meeting tonight. So just to put that out there. Madam Clerk, did you have a point directly to Councillor Gillespie's comments?
Yes, I did. Just in terms of the quorum. So currently, with the departure of Jenny Rachel Lynn from the committee and council agreeing not to replace that, to fill that vacant seat, the committee now stands at 9. So the way our quorum works under our rules of order is simple majority. So it would be 1 more than half. So our majority quorum requirements right now is 5. So if we move to a committee of 8, our quorum would still be 5. If you get my drift, because it would have to be 1 more than half, right? So it does affect the quorum, but because we had an original committee of 10 and now have 9, then our committee is 9. So so our quorum is it's 6. It's
okay.
5. Sorry, 5.
Yeah. So quorum doesn't change even if we stay at 9 or go to 8.
No, it doesn't.
Okay. Sarah has her hand raised. Go ahead, Sarah.
Just a brief question for Madam Clerk, actually. In your comments on whether we would fill that seat or not, the way you spoke about that, I'm just curious whether that would be a new, an opening of a new application, or if the committee would, or if council would reference the applications that were originally submitted.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I can certainly answer that question. When we originally asked for citizens to apply for this committee, and all of you had applied, everybody that applied was appointed. So we don't have any applications in the file of somebody who was not successful. So we would be going out again with a new call for citizens to submit their application. Those applications would go to the nominating committee. The nominating committee would review them, and then their recommendation would go to council. That's the way it works within the municipality.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome.
So through that process, Madam Clerk, and correct me if I'm wrong, before our next council meeting, I would assume there would not be time to put out a call for applications, and the nominating committee likely would not have time to vet that. So we would probably be into likely March before we would be able to appoint another committee member.
I would say that we do have a vacancy on our diversity committee as well. And the nominating committee has asked that we reach out to the chair of that committee and ask them to do a little bit of PR work in terms of the role of that committee. And we did already include that in an advertisement in the newspaper. We didn't get any applications. So that recommendation was to go through social media looking for interested people to serve on that committee. I would have to bring back the report from this committee to nominating and get their direction on how they wanted me to recruit. So, and you could certainly recommend that yourselves. Like we usually do social media anyway. We do our Facebook. There's Charity Village. So there's a few options that they use. And of course, we ask our council members and staff if there's anybody they know that might be interested. And of course, this committee would be asked as well. So because the newspaper advertisements are very expensive, but then again, if that's what the committee directs in terms, or this committee suggests to nominating, we could certainly go that route again. So you're right, though, it would take a couple of months because I have to go back now to nominating. Then they have to then we'd have to call, you have to have it open for a couple of weeks. So it probably would be March before we get back with that.
Right. So I'm just wondering in terms of next steps, if unless anybody has any more questions. So we would require a motion, Madam Clerk, to A, fill the seat, or B, leave the seat vacant.
Yes, I mean, the committee can certainly agree on it if they like. If everybody doesn't agree, then we would have a motion. We would count the votes for and against. So we would know if the motion carried or not, because we don't have an electronic system to do that. But or if everybody agrees one way or the other, then just to agree and by consensus and just direct staff.
Sure.
May I jump in,
Yes,
Chairman?
Yes, please do.
Just a question, and this would be posed to the committee. Is there a group that is currently not represented on this committee that should be?
I don't know enough.
We do not have somebody from the deaf and hard of hearing. Excuse me, do we?
I don't believe we do, no.
Not that I'm aware of.
So it's a pretty complicated process. Do we replace that individual is what we're hearing.
Right.
Yes and no. I mean, the process is, I guess, is lengthy. And then the other possibility is we put out a call for another committee member and we don't get any more interest. As our clerk mentioned, everybody that applied the first time was accepted onto the committee, and was qualified obviously to sit on the committee as well. So we do not have anybody else sitting in the queue. So we would be starting the process over and looking for new applicants to apply to join the committee. And yes, then they would have to be vetted by our nominating committee. Nominating committee would then make a recommendation to council, and council would be for or against the nominating committee's recommendation, of course.
I would like to jump in just to mention that this is just the process. it does take a while, but that's how all of us ended on this committee as well.
Correct.
It's just the way the process works.
Louise?
Yeah, just wondering if, well, maybe now is not the time that we need to replace this person or a person, that it's something that we could look forward to into the spring later, or into this, as we're starting out again in the fall sort of thing, that maybe there'll be more interest at that time, and delay it until that point. I don't know if that's wise or not, but it's just a suggestion.
I think that's a valid suggestion, Louise, and great point. Knowing that this committee is not, we're not creating a plan, and that'll be implemented April 1st, and we wipe our hands clean and we all walk away. So certainly, I think that's a valid point, that we could defer this to a later time, and at such time the committee feels it's appropriate to bring somebody new on. Recognizing we do have 2 vacancies, so that could be something that we look at a later date. Yeah. Sarah?
Just, with respect, counter to that, it's pertinent to consider that there is that delay, or not delay, but just the natural length of the process. So there may be that window where we'd like to have a new person, or we're going into a stage where it would be appropriate and valuable for someone new to come onto the committee before we sort of enter a new phase of action. And if we haven't begun the process, then that timing may not line up in the way that we might have intended or preferred. Just a thought.
Great point, Sarah. So I guess at this time I'm looking for direction from the committee. So in order to proceed, we can agree or motion to I just had a message. There's an opportunity to promote the opening through the project, and there's could be a focus on the work that we're doing. So somebody that could be perhaps right now it's not appropriate, maybe, and maybe the process starts after we're a little deeper into this. I'm not sure. I'm just looking for some direction. If the committee feels that we should replace and look for a 9th committee member, that's great. But I'll look for perhaps a motion or a suggestion from the committee, and how we can proceed from here.
Mr. Chair, if I may, and that was kind of my feeling as well. As a municipal councillor, I didn't want to feel that I was directing and as a nominating committee member, I didn't want to feel I was directing. So we have members here. We have Linda, Louise, and Sarah, and there's no reason why we can't ask them for their opinion, and then they can kind of say to us if they feel that the best scenario here. To me, as I listen, I'm thinking that maybe the best thing to do here is just defer.
I'd go with deferring, I think, for a while.
Okay.
Louise?
Yeah, I think deferring for a bit, maybe just midsummer or sometime when people are, getting back into things, and the fall session again. People already have what they're been going to do now, and with COVID and all that sort of stuff, they don't want to get involved in anything else. But maybe
Right.
by things opening up, you might find somebody that'd be more willing to join. As you mentioned, that diversity committee is looking for more information or more people too. So it may be better to defer.
Okay.
I'm finding that all makes sense. I would be really interested to see if we could include maybe some introductory information, or some some reference to the fact that the committee is seeking another member or two in the promotional material that's going out as part of our plan. Because once that material is sort of wrapping up and no longer active, then we're coming into the spring territory. So that may line up well. So I'd be in support of that. I think it was one of the councillors who mentioned that.
Okay.
Does
So
that help you guys?
what is it? Sorry.
Does that help you guys?
Yeah, I think so. I think we have a consensus to defer. So is that acceptable, Madam Clerk, or should we vote, or consensus okay?
No, if the committee agrees to defer, we can certainly, like, as we stated, it's not going to affect the quorum requirements anyway. You're going to need 5, regardless if you have a membership of 9 or 8. So with the vacancy created by Mr. Foster, we still need a quorum of 5 members. If we see that it's not working for the committee and that we require another member, then we can certainly go back and call for members. And we can do that by social media and et cetera. I might even be able to pull the nominating committee, you know, rather than calling a meeting and that type of thing, and see if they're okay with calling for someone if it's required, and then we can go back and have the meeting and then it goes to council. But really, we can't put anybody in place until council deals with it, so.
Okay. All right. So we will we'll defer the 9th member of the committee for now. And then the other point is to nominate a vice chair. We can certainly do that this evening if you wish, but we also have three missing members. So we may want to sit and think about that. Perhaps you're interested. Perhaps you want to think about if you're interested, and we can defer that to our next meeting as well. But if somebody would like to, if somebody would prefer to do that this evening, that's fine as well.
I
Yeah,
think it's better to wait until we have the full other people at the next meeting or whatever time.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Agreed.
More people, yeah.
Great. Okay, so we'll sit and think on that between now and the next meeting then, and perhaps we'll plan to elect a vice chair at our subsequent meeting.
Yeah. You and Mr. Chair, you could certainly send an email to the committee and say, look, this will be on the next agenda. If you're interested, we'll list it as a separate item so it's flagged and the committee members will know.
Okay, great. All right, thank you, Madam Clerk. Always a pleasure. So that brings us to the end of our agenda. If there's nothing else for this evening, I thank everybody for their time, your energy, your enthusiasm, all the great questions, the great presentation from Jessica and Krista. We have lots of work to do, but I think we're on the right track. So again, thank you, and I will call this meeting adjourned.
Thank you, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.